I wanted to do another bonus video to show another way you could use the ZDepth information to add a fog effect to your render. And actually, this kind of warm desert vibe, as far as the render goes, is a good example of where you might want to use something like that. If you want to make the air, give it a volumetric vibe, make it feel like there's some sort of haze or pollution or particulate in the air, and you want to fake that with ZDepth. It's actually fairly easy to do, and the information you've got it already. It's freebie. You're using it originally for this blur effect, but there are other reasons why you might want to plug in a ZDepth. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to use it to create a colored haze on top of the scene and make it feel like it's getting hazier as it gets further away from the camera, which is what would happen in real life. So in order to do that, first I need to create my fake layer of haze. I'm just going to do that by merging a color on top of my existing render. So I'm going to add a merge node. And it's going to plug the merge node in pretty much before the right node, but after my comp. So I'm going to drag that over. And you can see it automatically plugs into pipe B, which is perfect. So now it gives me an A pipe to plug into something new to put on top of this. And I'm just going to add a color. And I'm going to sample that color from the existing image. I'm going to pick one of the tones from within this image. So to create a solid color in Nuke, just going to hit the tab key to bring up the type in box. I'm going to create a constant, C-O-N, constant. And a constant is literally a constant color. It's a constant value, which in this case is the color. The default color is black. So what I'm going to do is going to double click on it. I'm going to come over here to the settings, and right here there's a color wheel and there's a color swatch that shows the current color. If you single click on the swatch, you'll see a white kind of diagonal line. That's actually an eyedropper. It's hard to see on black. But yeah, the eyedropper allows you to sample colors from the existing images or the existing viewport. And you do have to hold down the control key though while you're doing it. So first you single click to bring up the eyedropper, and then control click on the tone that you want. And I'm going for kind of a dark-ish brown. You can see this here. I'm just picking a few colors. I want a bit of red in it as well. Now, there's nothing that says I can't come in here afterwards and adjust the tones manually. But if I grab something from the existing scene, it should feel like it belongs and it matches. Yeah, so I'm going to go for something in the shadow areas here. I'm going to try this for now, and if I don't like it, I'll adjust it later. So I got a dark, it's got a warm reddish tone, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to merge this on top of my current scene. I'm going to plug the A pipe into my new constant, plug that merge into the viewer, and you can see I've now got this haze. The problem is it's an even blanket of haze. It's not changing at all. It's just blanketed evenly from top to bottom, left to right, and it's kind of boring. And if anything, it just looks like it's faded out. So now what I can do is I can use the ZDepth information to mask that out so that the foreground haze is thinner than the background haze, because that's what the ZDepth information has. It has a black and white gradation from the foreground to the background. White is opaque. Black is transparent. You guys already know that from just masking in general. And the way the ZDepth is set up, the white pixels are the pixels that are far away. So the fog, if I use it as a mask, it'll make it appear as if the fog is thicker the farther away it gets from the camera. So how do I set that up? I need to mask my constant layer with the information from the ZDepth. Luckily, Merge has a nifty mask built right in, so you guys are familiar with Photoshop. This is the equivalent of your layer mask. It's hidden away kind of. There's this little arrow to the right-hand side of the Merge node. Just drag that out and you'll see mask appears, and you literally just need to plug that into any of the nodes that has the ZDepth information. So to be honest with you, I could pick any of these three. ZDepth is accessible through all these nodes because they're all being piped down. So I'm going to pick this one because it's the closest to me. But yeah, the ZDepth focus node does have the ZDepth information built in. Now when I plug that in, you can see nothing happened. There's two reasons for that. One, is because of how the ZDepth is currently set up. If I look at the ZDepth in the viewer, so I'm going to plug the Z defocus into the viewer with the 1 key, and I'm going to go to the depth option here so we can see it, and you can see it's actually, I don't see anything, just a sea of red. That's because Arnold doesn't automatically store the depth information in the visible range, the default visible range of the luminosity of the pixels that are currently available or currently being displayed. So the dynamic range of the image is outside of the bounds of what this screen or what the screen is capable of, and sometimes you have to shift the pixels and by adjusting the brightness ultimately to find the area where the ZDepth information actually lives. So we need to make sure we can see it first before we can apply a mask with it. So to do that, I'm going to add a exposure node. It's probably the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to type in exposure. I'm going to plug that in to the pipe that goes from the ZDepth or ZDefocus into the merge. And I'm going to look at that in the viewer. So now I'm looking at the exposure, and I'm going to turn the exposure down until I can see the ZDepth information. Now what you're likely going to find is that with the default settings, you can't go dark enough. It still doesn't show up. There's two reasons that might be. One, you may have forgotten to change your channels here. By default, exposure is going to be assuming you want to change RGB. Nope. In this case, we want to change the depth. So even though I changed that, it's still not working. That just means the slider is not going low enough. I find usually in Arnold and Maya renders, you need to go down to at least -2. Aha. And you can see at -2, there it is. You can try more, -3. But what we don't want is to see this hard line here. That'll show up in the fog if we leave it there. So we want to adjust this to a point where this is a nice soft gradation. So let's try -2.5. Nope. I'm going to try -2.1. That's pretty good. Now I don't see the hard line. I see a gradation. The cars is visible. And yeah, away we go. The other thing we can do is adjust the black point. So this is going to determine where your fog starts. So anything in black will be fog free. Anything in red will have the fog slowly get added. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the black point start just where the car starts. So the back part of the car is going to be covered in a little bit of haze, but none of the foreground is going to be in the haze. So this is my mask right now. So now with that all done, I'm going to switch back to RGB so I can see everything properly, because you're limited when you're looking at the just the depth. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I've got all this set up properly. So now I'm going to plug my mask back into the exposure. Make sure I choose the right mask channel, which is depth Z. Just going to plug the merge into the viewer so we can see it, because right now it's still looking at alpha because I reset it. Aha! And now you can see as I do that, now the image changes and the ZDepth is doing its mask. So it's not as dramatic as I was hoping. So what I'm going to do is going to go back to my exposure and reduce the black point. And you can see when I change the black point, I'm pulling the fog closer to me. So I can adjust how dense the fog is by adjusting the black point value. Still very subtle, but it is going to be a subtle effect. I don't want to go crazy with this haze. The other thing you can do is choose a different color. Maybe I want to be more, I don't know, maybe I want my fog to be blue or green or pink or whatever the case may be. Or maybe I just want to make it darker. If I go back to the constant now, I double click on it. There we go. I can go to the color wheel and I can adjust the red, green, and blue channels. So if I want my fog to be more pink, or green, whatever the case may be, or just darker. You can fully adjust it. And again, I can go back to the depth now and fine tune my black point to have the fog kind of creep in or go back out. And so you can see now in doing this, I've made a couple of basic changes, but you know, a very dramatic change to the overall look. So I've gone from this to this to this to this, all by, you know, adding just different levels of nodes, and they each have their own job and they each have a purpose and they're each controlled, but all the information is still coming from the same sources, right? I'm in this case, I'm reusing information that I wanted for the blur, and giving it a second job. So again, that's just another bonus tutorial, not something you have to do in your assignments, but it's just good information to have for future work in compositing.